Mayor, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. There's a lot of things on people's minds and a lot of questions that we have. And I think the first is, what's the mechanism in the system that allows something like this to happen? Is it the DA? Is it police training? Is it our policies? Is it state law? What's actually the problem here?
The case with Bernardo Palacios-Carbajal and Sim Gill's decision last week hinges down to one point, which is the state's law on the use of lethal force. And that's what we train our police officers across the state on and hold them accountable to. And it is the decision-making framework within which Sim had to make his decision. So I think that the DA did his job as we elected him to do within that legal framework. He showed that our police officers also did their jobs according to the training based on that state statute, and therefore they're accountable within that framework and they were justified. Now, I know that doesn't feel like justice to a lot of people who are hearing on our streets and in the public forum. So the system, and when you ask about how does this happen, that's how it happens, and that's how it has to change too. The destruction that we saw last week after his decision does nothing to affect the change. Sim has talked about wanting to work on that state code with our legislators. I also want to see that state code change, and I know that many people in Salt Lake City do too, and beyond. Even though Sim Gill found the two officers justified in their actions regarding the death of Bernardo Palacios-Carbajal, this does not mean that this is over, that this conversation is being set down. I think on the contrary, as we've been saying since before the DA's decision, the state code that stipulates the legality of officers using lethal force is much broader than it should be. If we are to tighten this up technically, we're just beginning that review, and we invite the public to help us in the technical review of it. It needs to be safer for the public and also for the public safety officers. We can't do these revisions at the expense of one or the other. But I want people to know that that justified ruling by the district attorney does not mean that this conversation is over.
For people who are hurt and angry, what do you think is the most effective way for them to help participate in creating change?
I know that this is going to sound like a lot, but we've got city level work to do, and our Commission on Racial Equity and Policing that is coming together right now, and it's going to be a very broad coalition, is also going to invite community voices from time to time to give them feedback and ideas. People can engage at that level. They can engage with the city on our upcoming equity master plan. And this is going to talk more about city policies, city investments that we make, our approach to hiring people who we consider successful candidates. Folks can participate in that. Up to the state level with the legislature, this is where the post training is decided, which is the officer training throughout the state of Utah. It's also where that use of lethal force statute rests, as well as a few other statutes that can come into play under circumstances like this. So engage with your legislators, your senator, your representative, and the governor. And I think that incoming governor, whoever that might be, I won't make any predictions, but I think it's pretty clear that we have a change happening with the people of Salt Lake, with the people of the state of Utah, and we need to see that reflected in our legislatures.
There's a lot of levels of government that need to work on this, and a lot of people are asking, what concrete, meaningful steps is your administration making now to ensure that things like this don't happen in our city again?
There are many meaningful steps that Salt Lake City is taking right now. One of those is with our Police Civilian Review Board. That's a volunteer body that sits outside of the police department and has the opportunity to review any officer-involved critical incidents and give employment recommendations to Chief Brown. That work is happening right now on the Bernardo Palacios-Carbajal case. We expect a decision from them by midday tomorrow. If people want to participate in that board, we would like to increase the diversity of representation on the board. And you can go to SLC boards and commissions, fill out the application, and be considered there. Another thing that we're doing is increasing the recruitment diversity for Salt Lake City Police Department and increasing the community outreach Chief Brown does a really great job, frankly, of getting out into the community. He's at mosques, synagogues, he goes to schools, he's at camps, and he visits churches. He knows community members and they know him. But I would like to see more of our police officers given the opportunity to build those relationships at the community level. The legislative piece cannot be understated, and our Commission on Racial Equity and Policing will be making legislative recommendations for Salt Lake City's legislation, as well as for the state statutes. They'll also be looking at our policing culture and the budget, and they'll be giving us those recommendations in a rolling, ongoing basis, perhaps for the next year. And we're very excited and anticipate some great changes to come from their work, and we're ready to implement.
So you've announced that we're going to be painting Black Lives Matter mural at Washington Square at the city, in front of the city and county building. Some are calling that performative. You've referred to it as symbolic. Can you talk to us about why we're doing that?
Yeah, we heard from Black Lives Matter members and from business owners in the downtown area who were saying, why don't we do this as we saw other cities around the country do it? It is just a symbol. It's not any meaningful change. That's the change that we were just talking about, and the change that will be ongoing. This is a piece of art. It's symbolic, and it's something that we heard from the community that they wanted to see, and people in Salt Lake City Hall in my office were embracing that idea.
With everything going on, what do you think is the best place for residents to spend their energy to create change in the short term?
I think a piece of what we've learned already from the movement that is afoot is that we need to be cognizant of our own privilege and of the lens through which we see the world. No matter what the color of your skin is, we are being asked to be more considerate of the circumstances of others, of the way that things are and the way that they are not for many of our neighbors and people in the community. I think that won't end. It shouldn't end, that self-evaluation. And then working outwardly, there will be a lot of work ahead of us. There is right now at the local level, at the grassroots level. Obviously, there's a lot of organizing happening, nonprofit level, and helping the city connect with our youth, helping us examine our policies, helping us examine how we operate to serve our citizens. It must change. We've known this, and we've been talking about this. One of those opportunities I would like to ask people to be involved in is the creation of Salt Lake City's Equity Master Plan, which we got funding for back in March. That is going out to bid right now because no city should do their own evaluation of how equitable they are or are not. And when we bring that third party on, I'm going to ask Salt Lake City residents and all of our employees to help us create that master plan for Salt Lake City's future to be more equitable, more opportunities for everyone in the city.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us about these very important issues today.
Thanks for having me on today, Brian.